Hi, welcome to Recovery Is. I'm Angela Morton, and I work on Rural Communities Opioid Response Program grant projects in Northwestern Pennsylvania, specifically in Venango and Crawford counties and rural Erie County. I'm here today with Dr. Mandy Fauble, Director of Clinical Care at UPMC Western Behavioral Health at Safe Harbor, and we're talking with Sean Jones, Senior Peer Specialist who works with people in substance use recovery in the recovery workforce. And so what that means is we talk about substance use, drugs and alcohol, and how we can help people get connected to services, especially in rural areas where sometimes people aren't talking a lot about drugs or alcohol or addiction and all the things that might be getting in the way of getting some help when a person wants to or is ready. So thank you, Mandy, and thanks, Sean, for being here on Recovery Is. Sean, could you tell us a little more about what it means to be a peer specialist? What do peers do?
Well, what do we do? I mean, we help people find their way is the way I kind of look at it. Being someone in recovery myself, a little over 8 years in recovery. That's prior to that 20 years of chaotic use. Now I just use my knowledge of the past 20 years to help people find their way. So someone who's struggling with some sort of substance issue or, a mental health issue that's leading to substance use, I walk with them. I don't lead them. I don't push them in any one direction. I like to think of it as, if you think of hiking, I'm going to walk on the path next to you. And when we come to different choices, we're just going to discuss them and then you lead the way. And I'll help support you through that, whatever that is.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about how you came into this role and what it takes to be prepared to work with someone formally as a peer.
Okay. Yeah, so like I said, about 8 years ago is when I first started to get sober. This time, I want to emphasize on that. It was this time. I was 38 when I got sober, 8 years ago. But the first time I ever went to a NA meeting, I was 19 years old. So even at a very young age, I knew that there was an issue there. But, going through all those years of my life, I wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't sure what way to go, you know. So then this last time, there was a major life moment that made me truly realize I had to change. And so I was going to counseling, and my counselor was just he was kind of helping me figure out myself and to, really think about what were the things that were making me do the things I was doing earlier, right? What was leading to this use that I just couldn't control? And so during that process, I owned a restaurant at the time, and there was a gentleman who used to come to my restaurant all the time, and I was, of course, like everyone else, posting things on Facebook about, this many days sober, but I was talking a lot about meditation. And a gentleman who came into my restaurant came up to me and handed me a book about meditation and recovery. And then when I started to read about that, that's when I started to get a little more connected with myself. And then that helped me get more connected with the recovery community here in Jamestown, where I live. And so through that, I got introduced to a place here in town, the Mental Health Association. And I had volunteered to start doing a cooking class to teach people how to cook healthy meals on a low budget, so a public budget, basically food stamps, how you can go to the store and not just get the junk cheap food. You can turn the corner at the 7-Eleven and find, fresh fruits, vegetables, all these different things. So by starting to do that, then I just kind of realized, like, at that point, like, this is what I need to be doing, is being connected with these people, with other people in recovery. And I wanted to be able to use, my experiences in my life to help them understand. Because, of course, a lot of them were a lot younger than me, a lot of the people that I was first meeting. And all I could think about is how I wish I had had some sort of mentor, like that when I was younger. But also, too, I was seeing how there was a lot of roadblocks. So, I wanted to get more involved to, start advocating for them, to start helping them to, make sure that they could get the services that they need. And then that's when I learned about the different, certifications that you can get and different things you can do in order to get a job. And that's how I got into it. It was, I don't know, the way I always think about it, I talk to people like when I was little, this is going to sound odd, but when I was really young, I wanted to be a lawyer. But the only reason why I wanted to be a lawyer is because I wanted to stand up for people, right? Like I wanted to help people. I didn't want to send people to jail. I wanted to do the exact opposite. I wanted to stand up for them for whatever reason. And so part of my soul searching, if you want to call it, like in recovery, was how can I get back to doing the things I really love, like feel like myself kind of thing, because there was a huge part of my life that I thought I was a chef and that's all I'm ever going to be as a chef. And food is my passion. But then searching was like, no, there's still something missing. And when I found out about becoming, a peer and especially a peer advocate, it's like, okay, this is my chance to do something I wanted to do when I was a lot younger, but in a much more rewarding way, honestly, spiritually, So that's how I decided to become a peer.
It's so touching. I think many of us that work in human services or social work, psychology, we're really drawn to helping people. But what sometimes gets left out is just the gift that gives to us. And I think you really captured that well. I have one more question, Angela, if it's okay. Sean, I'm really curious because you mentioned a few different things. You mentioned going to the MHA was helpful. You mentioned helping other people was helpful for you and just sort of exploring kind of who you were in your new adventures as a person in recovery. You mentioned the 12-step program. That's a lot of stuff. And sometimes I think what I have heard is that people can have an impression that there's like one path to recovery. And sometimes if they get in a path that doesn't work for them, it really turns them off. And they can lose a lot of significant time because it just wasn't like the right fit for them. And I wonder if you'd be willing to maybe share some of your experiences or experiences of people that you've worked with that helps really illustrate why we do better when we take an approach that there truly are many paths to recovery.
Well, I mean, yeah, that for me, I mean, that's just one of the things is like in the past when I would try to attempt recovery, I there was always around here, there was always the traditional AA and A, and that was kind of it here. And not that there's anything wrong with those programs. I've gotten information from both of them, but neither of them were the right one for me. And that was one of the things. So this last time when I started to get into recovery and I was talking with my counselor, one of the first things he said is, "Oh, you should really go to the AA meetings." I said, "I don't want to." Like nothing against the program. It's just I have to find something else about myself before I'm going to be able to do any of these things because I've tried those in the past and they didn't work for me. So I mean, it's just like the way I explain. So when I meet with someone, say like an outpatient or at a rehab or something like that, and I talk to them, I said, listen, whoever made us gave us the ability to choose, right? So I decided to put on this black shirt, you put on a gray one, you put on like a reddish shirt. We have these abilities to choose things. So not everyone's the same. And so not every recovery path is going to be the same. That you have to, I feel in recovery, you have to look at all of the options and you have to explore all of the options, but with a sense of openness. So not closed-minded. So I mean, a lot of people can get really turned off by religious aspects of groups, but like I tell them, but you don't have to focus on that part. If you go to a meeting, there's going to be something you're going to learn from it. Take that, leave the rest in the room, and keep searching for yourself of what's going to fit for you. And that's, I don't know, I think that's really hard to do at certain times. especially when you're first in recovery. You've got your mind is just going, so fast and just spinning in circles. So to have someone that can sit there with an open mind and talk to you about all the different options and, have a simple conversation with you about it, as opposed to, telling you this is the way this is going to work, this is the way that's going to happen. Like, that is going to push someone completely away. It has to be the person's choice, or it's never going to work. And that's something that I didn't really realize, like I said, until, I'm 38 years old, and especially for young kids too. That's another thing. A lot of the kids I work with, I think, well, I call them kids, but, they're 22 years old, 23 years old. I'll never forget, I was sitting with a young man once, and he was only 20. And he goes, I don't know if I want to stop, though. I don't know if I want to stop. I said, well, time out. I said, let's talk about this for a second. I said, I get it. Right now you're thinking, what do you mean I can never drink a beer? Like, I'm not even 21 yet. What if I want to drink a beer? When I turned 21, I said, and I understand that. Like, and there's nothing wrong with feeling that, but the opiates that you're using, those are causing harm, to your body and to your mental state. And that's what I want to focus on. That's what I want to talk to you about. Like, isn't that why you're here? And he's like, well, yeah, I want to stop doing that. I said, okay, so then don't worry. If you want to have a beer when you turn 21, proceed with caution. I don't know if that's going to be an issue for you or not, but right now let's talk about what is an issue, what is, causing turmoil in your life. And then when we get to the next spot, we'll get to that. But, it's because I think that's just it. A lot of these programs, well, not a lot of these programs, there are certain pieces of programs that can really scare people, I think, and they're just not ready to devote. They're not ready to devote to something, but I can understand that, I don't know.
I think, Sean, just listening to you, it's very hopeful, because I think what you're describing is that there is a connection in recovery that's very empowering, where the person can kind of choose what they're ready for, that people can respect that. And you're also describing, that if a person has maybe entered a program or entered a treatment situation, or they've tried something and it's not been the right fit, that there might be something else that's the right fit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hope actually in that. Angela, I want to make sure you get a chance to ask any questions that you have, or share things you're thinking about.
And they're just,
I actually was thinking similarly to what you said about hope, that Sean, it sounds like, tell me if I'm leaning in the right direction, and what I've experienced and as a clinician and encouraging people, even when we do this and we talk about, if someone's listening and you think, hey, I can relate to this and I'm struggling, or that I think somebody I know might be experiencing this, it starts with a conversation. And sometimes I think when you bite it off in that tiny piece of, it's just a call to your local county substance use program, or reaching out to somebody who has been an accepting person. It doesn't mean if I make that call today, I'm going into a detox program, I'm going into rehab, and I'm getting into complete abstinence for the rest of forever. It's very overwhelming. So I hear, like what Mandy, what you're saying along the lines of hope, that Sean, it really just starts with a conversation about what a person individually might need. There may be somebody who's just in the early stages of realizing that it's slipping outside of their control, or that they're using too much, drinking or using a drug too much, or misusing a prescription, or became dependent on a prescription and bought a pill from somebody, or there's a whole range, and it starts with a conversation, right?
oh no, 100%. Yeah. And it has to start that way. I mean, it does. I mean, if you're going to compare it to, like, a doctor, you know what I mean, for like that works on someone that has, let's say diabetes, right? Like, the doctor doesn't come in and go, that's it, no cookies, no sweets, da 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 da. You know what I mean? Like, they don't do that. They come in and they go, hey, this is what's going on. let's work on your diet, like maybe try this, maybe try that. And it's very gentle and it's soothing because you're trying to encourage the person to become healthy, right? Like, I mean, that's what you're doing. Like, you have to approach, substance issues and honestly mental health issues the exact same way, because the person you're talking to is just as scared as the person that just found out they have diabetes or a major heart issue or whatever it is. Like you have to be gentle with it, or they're just going to run away and they're not going to want to do anything. And that's, one thing I really like about the way we're starting to do the program up here, and this is something that we've noticed that has worked really, really well the last few years, is having the peers as a constant in the person's recovery and treatment if that's what they choose. So like for instance, I can meet someone in the emergency room, right? So someone comes in the emergency room for some sort of substance issue. I can go in there, introduce myself, just have a very, calm conversation, ask them how they're doing. Like, do you want me to go get you something to drink? Are you hungry? Are you know what I mean? Like, just trying to be nice and help them figure something out. Of course, they're going to be really scared to go on to whatever the next step might be. But, I'll tell them, well, how about this? Once you're discharged from here, you can just come meet with me and I'll just explain stuff to you. I'll tell you what inpatients like. I'll tell you what outpatients like. I'll tell you what different groups are like, and all these different things. And they're very open to that. And so then they're meeting me in the emergency room. The next step, they're meeting me just to talk about options. And then, whatever that option is that they decide to choose after that, I'm going to be with them there as well. So like if they're an outpatient, they'll continue to meet with me. If they go to inpatient, I can go talk with them there. So it's you're involved in all of these steps, but to give them a sense of calm as they enter into them instead of being afraid. So same back to the diabetes guy, you know, the emergency room doctor saying this is why you fainted because you have diabetes. This is where you're going on Tuesday. Well, the guy's going to be super scared to go to this doctor on Tuesday. It's I'm trying to calm that scaredness, right? But also to appear, we try to go to these appointments with the person so that there's someone there to advocate for them, right? Like I said earlier, peer advocate. And I take that second part very, very seriously. The peer part, yes, I am a peer. I'm someone with lived experience. But being able to advocate for someone, especially in situations like this, is huge. So saying, no, I understand whoever that this is what you're saying this person should do, but that's not what they want to do. This is what they want to do, and please listen to them. So having a peer there to help speak for the person when they're scared, goes a long way. I don't know. I kind of want to draw attention.
Great.
As you said, toward advocating, really, we talk about peer support or peer advocacy. And as I kind of bring it all back together, because the time goes so fast, that peer support may be the only thing someone does. Like maybe they don't choose to get into treatment. Maybe they have some case management services to help with other non-treatment related needs like housing or transportation or childcare or something in order to get to groups or meetings or supports of some kind. So I think that whole range of helping people get into treatment, helping them get whatever case management needs they might have met, and having that peer support and advocacy, which is critical to recovery.
Well, and you bring something up too that, I start talking about things and I forget about stuff. Well, not forget, but it kind of, goes off to the side. But, that's another huge part of a lot of this is, treatment might be months down the line. It really might be. So like, for instance, I always use the example of, if someone's sleeping under the bridge, they're homeless and they're sleeping under the bridge, they don't want to get sober, because who wants to be sober sleeping under a bridge, right? They're not going to want to. So having a peer that's going to meet with them on a weekly basis or maybe twice a week to work on housing, to try to get them a place to live, a place to call their own, get them a sense of security, safeness, warmth, like once they have something like that, that's your first building block The trust is there, and now you've kind of got them into a more comfortable situation. Now you can start to move into different directions. I mean, and also too, like when you think of treatment, if they're going to do, say, outpatient, like you can't expect someone who's homeless or, has a chaotic lifestyle to make it to a 9 o'clock appointment. They're not going to, period. They're just not. More than likely, they're not getting up until after 1 in the afternoon. So, for a peer to say, hey, I can meet you for coffee at 5, or you can come to the office and see me at 6 o'clock. Like that makes a huge difference in their world, because then you're helping to not conform. You're meeting them 100% on their terms. So not just, like in a simple sense, but in a grander sense too, of their time frame, the way they do things. You're going to get a better response that way. So being able to help these people with these things, and then, advocate for them to get safe housing, to get food, to get clothing, to, start to just feel a little bit better about themselves, and they're just, the next strides can be gigantic. I mean, they just truly, truly can. And that takes patience. That's another thing. It just takes a lot of patience, to be able to work with people. And it's funny because I think about that, and I've seen a lot of people over the past 6 years doing this job. And when I run into them after not seeing them for a long time, I'm always just like, hey, what's up? Nice to see you. And they just kind of look at me. They're like, aren't you mad? I'm like, for what? Well, I stopped showing up, or I didn't call you, and I don't care. You're standing here now. Like, I'm just happy to see you. I'm happy to see your face. Like don't worry about it, man. You didn't do anything wrong to me. I'm not mad at you about anything. And that makes a big difference too, and they're just, I don't know, that kindness piece, that understanding that it's, and nothing against clinicians. I hope to be one soon, actually, but that's a big piece of being a peer, is that 100% understanding. I think all of us who get into roles like this have some sort of life experience. But when you've lived in certain situations, you're going to be more understanding to someone else who's going through those exact same situations. So when you see them, you're not going to say, well, what happened to you? You were supposed to be here yesterday at 3 o'clock. I don't care if you're here right now. I have other appointments. That's a very business style of kind of doing things. Whereas, I could say, oh, hey, what's up? Sorry you didn't get here yesterday. Just give me 5 minutes, man. I got to finish this up, and then I'll talk with you real quick. And even if that real quick is just to set up another appointment, it's still, you're showing them that little piece of respect, and I think that peers, we have more of a flexibility to be able to do that. And that's what can make it very successful, I think.
Yeah, I think I know time does go really quickly, but I'm going to leave today's show feeling like very hopeful, because I think you promoted a lot of hope, Sean, and I think also described the role of just radically accepting people where they are, and any one of us can do that. You can definitely do that in a peer lens. Being a peer doesn't automatically make you accept people. So any of us can work on being more accepting, because that's going to make those conversations that Angela talked to us about go a little bit more easily. And I think hopefully if people are listening and thinking about getting engaged in some type of support for substance use or connecting a loved one, they've now heard about different opportunities that maybe they didn't even know existed. And so, Angela, I know that you always like to close us out with a few wise words and also some information about services. So I'm going to kick it over to you to do that.
Thank you, Mandy. I just want to make sure that if anybody who's listening wants more information, they can either go to our website, www.recoveryisnwpa.org, or call your local county drug and alcohol office and ask for any of these services, from
substance use or drug and alcohol peer support or peer advocacy, case management, and just a screening call, a conversation about substance use services. And it's just a conversation. You can also call 1-800-662-HELP, the word help, HELP, and that is a national substance use and mental health hotline. So you can share where you're located and they can give you options to get connected to treatment and recovery support services that way too. Lots of other things to share, but if you call your local county office, they have everything from harm reduction resources like Narcan for overdose reversal and prevention. Anybody can have Narcan. It's like knowing CPR. There are now fentanyl and xylazine test strips for people to test the drug supply and be more safe. Wound care kits, Deterra drug disposal pouches to properly dispose of medications so that they aren't misused by anybody. So lots of resources that we could talk for another half an hour about, but thank you so much, Sean Jones, senior peer specialist, peer advocate, as you said, and Mandy Fauble with UPMC Western Behavioral Health at Safe Harbor. Thank you both, and thank you for joining us for Recovery Is.